So all good models try to do three things, or they should do three things rather. First of all, a good model explains current phenomenon. What's happening? Why is that happening that way? In strength and conditioning terms, a model of movement informs how we instruct, why we cue the way we cue, what we're looking for in terms of successful completion of the movement. But also a good model needs to also help us predict what's going to happen. So can we see or anticipate future behavior? So in strength and conditioning, if I am missing a range of motion, predicated on what I should be able to do, I should be able to anticipate what the compensation looks like. So instead of having always to memorize a whole bunch of different movements and then try to memorize also what happens when someone can't do that movement, I have a prediction model which helps me to anticipate and predict movement dysfunction or movement compensation, which may be stable and not dysfunction, just not the best expression of what's possible for the human body. And lastly, we've got to see it be able to be communicated to other people so that everyone can use the same model. So those are those three things. And when you're working with a movement system, we always want to try to ask those things. So in our movement idea, the model that we have is we have based on this concept called the archetype, which tells us what the sort of the bookends of function look like. And we look at that for the shoulder, for example, in 4 key positions. And they're not the only positions the shoulder does. It can translate through and combine motions. But these positions really tell us what the bookends are. What's happening here in long lever and short lever, what's happening here in long lever, short lever, what's happening here in long lever, short lever, and then what's going on in the back in long lever and short lever. And those end up being really good approximations for literally every movement we do, certainly in strength conditioning. And then when I'm engaged in movements like throwing, I may be transitioning through one movement to the other, right? This would be the hang archetype in long lever, for example, this shape. So how do I know what good range of motion is? One of the nice things is, again, if we look at that first thing, that anti-archetype concept, which is, well, what's the predicted model of movement dysfunction? Which means it allows me to see when someone has broken the rule. And the rule, for example, in going overhead is that I need to have end range flexion and I need to have rotation, and moving towards an externally rotated force or adding a rotation force is crucial. So this isn't full range of motion. Full range of motion means that I have end range flexion and I still can create an external rotation force on that. So what's nice then is that we have a way of saying, hey, all of the cueing, elbow pits forward, break the bar, all of those cues end up falling into that. Does it explain how I teach a movement to work, or I teach someone to do the movement? The prediction means that if I see someone going up and elbow flaring, I wonder, why are they moving away from better joint congruency and better joint position? Don't get into the trap of task completion. Right? We know that you can complete the task, but again, we're always teaching towards trying to restore people's normative ranges, their base, the range of motion that every human being should have. And it turns out, of course, that those things map beautifully with the physiology expressions of our best movement traditions, Olympic lifting, gymnastics, martial arts, fighting. All of that stuff tells us and informs us about better ways to move and better ways to organize. So the prediction model in this case, flexion, external rotation, right, which is really easy to see when I suddenly see someone press and something goes on. So the anti-archetype then is me moving away from the prediction model. So the archetype explains a certain position, right, to allow me to have the best access to stability, best access to range of motion here. But turns out if I don't have that, I'll continue to solve that movement problem, and that's the language we call compensation. And stable compensation means I may not have pain with this problem, right? We shouldn't be using pain, but lack of force production, or lack of movement choice, or lack of expression of being able to apply that movement to another movement. So this is the basic template for model. Does it explain what we're seeing? Does it predict future behavior? And can we communicate it? The anti-archetype then is that expression of compensation. So hang on for part 2, and I'll show you what I mean.